that the Prophet ﷺ says, I and a woman who is widowed and is patient with her child, meaning a woman, a single mom that has to raise her child by herself, she's patient with her child, will be like these two fingers in Jannah. There are other hadith that are like that. Why? In any case, you're raising young, vulnerable children. You're in their cause, whether they're yours or not yours. Because in essence, a single mom becomes the kafila in that way. She is the one, she's playing the role of mother and father for her child. She is getting that reward by virtue of doing that. There are other hadith, and some of these hadith really need to be looked at through the lens of a cultural historian. You've got to understand what the culture was like at the time. Why? Because there's another narration where the Prophet ﷺ mentions امرأة ذات منصب وجمال حبست نفسها على يتاماها حتى ماتوا أو بانوا. So the Prophet ﷺ mentions a woman of great beauty, great status. She held herself. What that means is that she stayed unmarried. So her husband passed away or she became a widow. She stayed unmarried and was patient with her children. The Prophet ﷺ says, despite, again, being a beautiful woman and someone that would not have trouble getting remarried, she stayed patient with her child, that the Prophet ﷺ says that she would be with me in Jannah like these two things. Now, here's the thing. In that society, in that culture, there is a fear, because everything works on lineage and how is this child going to work for me and how is this child going to honor his tribe and so on and so forth. There was an inherent fear that when a woman got remarried, that the stepfather would mistreat that child. The child would not be treated like his own. It was actually common in the Arab world. And that's why even in the ahkam of talaq, the rulings of divorce, the standard default ruling is that a woman takes care of the children unless she gets remarried. Then she forfeits that right. That's standard. Nuances there because the imam makes the ultimate decision looking at the circumstances where it's better for the child and so on and so forth. But the standard ruling was that. Why? Because it was common that the father comes in, and because it's not actually his child, he will mistreat that child. So the Prophet ﷺ was praising the women who, because of that fear, decided to stay patient and raise their children for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and did not get remarried. Is it encouraged for a woman whose husband dies to not get remarried? Salama radiallahu anha told her husband when he was passing away, she told him, I will never marry anyone after you. I swear by Allah, I won't marry anyone after you. Abu Salama said, I'm going to give you something and I want you to testify to it. She said, what? He said, swear by Allah that you will remarry. So he forced her, and subhanAllah, what that materialized in was the Prophet ﷺ, who of course, with the exception of Aisha radiallahu anha, all of his wives were previously married, many widows, all of them, again, with the exception of Aisha, previously had husbands. So it's not a general thing, but the Prophet ﷺ is talking about a very specific cultural context. There's another beautiful narration that the Prophet ﷺ, and this one does in fact have a weak narrator, but it's a very beautiful one and it's used again as supplemental in this chapter, that the Prophet ﷺ says, أَنَا أَوَّلُ مَنْ يَفْتَحْ بَابَ الْجَنَّةِ, I'm the first one, يَفْتَحُ بَابَ الْجَنَّةِ, to open the gate of paradise. فَإِذَا أَمْرَأَةٌ تُبَادِرُنِي, there's a woman that would be racing with me. فَأَقُولُ مَنْ أَنْتِ, I would stop her and I would say, who are you? فَتَقُولُ أَنَا إِمْرَأَةٌ تَآيَمْتُ عَلَى أَيْتَامٍ لِي, I am a woman that was left with orphans and I stayed patient with Allah and I raised them well. So that's something that existed. The only reason I mention these hadiths is to show you the reward of this is not limited to orphans. It's your own children as well. It's taking vulnerable young children and raising them. What's the wisdom of it? Because the Prophet ﷺ never says anything out of just empty expression. What's the wisdom of it? The Prophet ﷺ is essentially the orphan that adopted the world.